Well, hello and welcome everyone to the MarketScale Automation Industry Roundtable. I'm Tyler Kern. Thanks so much for joining us for our conversation today, where we're talking the biggest trends and topics in the world of automation. Today we're taking a look at the technologies that power automation with three incredible panelists. First we have Martin Nobbs. He's the Chief Technology Director at Hardinge. Martin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon.
And we also have Joe Gemma. He's the Global Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Cavalry Robotics. Joe, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having us.
And finally, we have Roberta Nelson-Shea, Global Technology Compliance Officer at Universal Robots. Roberta, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Well, we are thrilled to have our panelists on the show with us today. And to our audience out there, this is a collaborative environment. We want it to be interactive. And so please leave us comments, questions, anything down there in the comment section on the right-hand side of your screen. If you scroll down a little bit, look over there on the right, drop us questions and comments in there. We will answer as many questions as we have time for today. So be sure to drop any questions that you might have in there for any of our panelists and drop us comments in there as well. Maybe some upcoming topics that you'd like to see on the Automation Roundtable. We'd love to get your feedback on the conversation today. But without any further ado, let's dive into our conversation here as we look at technologies that are powering automation, like lasers and sensors and AI, things along those lines. A lot of different things we can talk about in there, but I want to start off just by looking at the human side of automation and the human side of robotics, and talk a little bit about how we integrate those two things in together. How do we have workers in facilities alongside robots and things along those lines? And so just to kick things off, Joe, I want to ask you first, just have you noticed any pain points when it comes to automation and bringing in automation into a facility alongside humans? Have you noticed any pain points in that area?
I guess there'll be several things that we can discuss. Certainly, number one is fear. And fear from both the companies and people. People getting involved with having robots, alongside them. It's created some angst and sometimes misunderstanding what that might mean or what it might mean related to their jobs and the tasks that they had. Fear from the company, bringing new technology that they didn't have in the past, and how do they manage that? And then probably the most common thing that we see as a pain point is having the right staff to support the technology they bring in. So in a nutshell, there's a bunch of things, but I think those are the three biggest things. And I think that's based on people are used to a structured environment. And when you bring in automation technology, it becomes a little bit more unstructured environment. So it changes their world a little.
Martin and Roberta, any follow-ups to Joe's comments?
I got one thing to say, and it might seem to be just a little bit strange when you say you bring in technology or automation and that people are fearful. There's sometimes the fear of losing a job, and that has been found not to be true because automation improves the productivity of a facility. So it means that there's more throughput, more resources, and more revenue for that company. And it means then there's greater opportunities for the employees that are there. So I think that's one thing that needs to be clearly explained to people. And the other thing is machinery has been used in the workplace for hundreds of years. Let's be realistic. Machinery has been in existence for more than 100 years. And the initial start of that was with the use of machine tools, and machine tools have evolved. And we can have a conversation from just a person from that sort of industry. So machinery has been in use and is used. It's just that the machines are getting a little more sophisticated, hopefully easier to use. And from the vantage point of robotics, we're not talking about Terminators here. And sometimes people like to have that mental image, Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator. Robots are machines. They really are. They only do what they're programmed to do. So I think that's the first thing everybody should understand. It is not importing some alien creature that could run amok and go wild. It is another machine, and that machine does what it's told to do, meaning by its programming.
And if I may add something, robots collaborate with machines. I represent a little bit the machine tool aspect of this discussion today, as it is equally important to support loading and unloading of part into the machine so that the operator does not have to do this manually. the machine tool itself also has to participate in the automation process and really execute tasks in an automatic fashion. That can include such things as measuring in the machine with a probe, doing any kind of laser measurement of tools, or doing any kind of other tasks that otherwise would be very time consuming for the operator to complete, thus really making the productivity aspect really possible and really pushing this forward.
So Roberto, have you seen workplaces and facilities evolve to maybe accommodate both man and machine in a way that highlights and takes into account the strengths and the weaknesses of both and really amplify them? Have we seen an evolution take place inside of facilities that allows for that to happen?
That's actually a great question and a great way to word it, meaning how can you maximize the strength of both? Machines, in this, I'm going to include robot applications, have the wonderful aspect of very repeatable motions, actions. What it's programmed to do, it does. It does it time and time and time again. And that's better than a human, because I can tell you that if I were to try to repeat the same sentence 5 times, I will have altered it by the time I get even to the 3rd time of repeating that one sentence. So the machine provides us with the consistency that's needed for quality and the repetition that's needed to make sure that we get everything done the same way in as short a period of time. However, people have brains, and the brains are really what set people apart from a machine. A robot is a machine. You program it to do something, it executes it. The wonderful thing about some of the newer robots that you're seeing on the market, and that includes for my own company as well as others, the fact that they're much easier to use, so that people without having to have very highly taught skills or have training can make use of it, program it, and put it to use. And then that person can be freed up to do tasks that involve their brains and require some more independent thought and creative thinking. So nowadays we're seeing more automation, and I'm going to include robots in that, being used for applications that are tedious so that the people who did them can do more for the company with their brains, because that's a really, that's a fabulous attribute, and it gives more resources to companies.
Yeah, I would add to that. I mean, let's face it. Robots should do things that they are best at. Things people don't want to do, like lifting heavy items, or maybe even testing chemicals, or crunching data for that matter. It's pretty boring, as Roberta talked about some of those, dull things. But that frees up people to do what they're best at, like adapting to changing situations, coming up with creative solutions to problems. It's a real advantage of them working together. Teams are groups of people with separate, though maybe independent roles and responsibilities. Like, for example, a surgical team, for instance, might include a nurse, a surgeon, anesthesiologist. Similarly, members of a human robot team should be assembled to take on the different elements of a complex task.
That's a really good point. Now, as a follow-up, I know that there is maybe a labor shortage and that sort of thing. So is there any danger of a shortage of brains on one side that can then carry out those other tasks? Is that a concern moving forward, that facilities become too just simply automated and without that kind of brain power and thinking? Is that the concern then moving forward, that the human side of things becomes the lacking part?
So that's a really tough, the way they worded it, I find it difficult to answer, and I'll try to explain why. We have a labor shortage right now, and primarily what has been found is it's a shortage of people available that would be willing to work in a manufacturing environment. Whether or not it's the shift work, although there's shift work everywhere, I don't know why, but you are not seeing the influx of workers into manufacturing environments. And so therefore, that begs the question, why not? Does it mean that the jobs are not desirable? The workplaces are not enjoyable? But what you do tend to have in all these facilities is you have workers who come to work every day, so they are committed to that job. So how can you wrest the best that you can out of the workers that you've got? And one way to do that is to improve their job so they have greater job satisfaction. Then the next question is, if there's greater job satisfaction, then you can create opportunities for new people to come in. And these new people coming in might see that they have more opportunities than being the machine tender. They're instead, I can tell you there's great prestige that goes along with saying, you know, when you're out with your friends or your family, oh, I'm a robot programmer. That is something that really boosts ego. And with that, we have hopes that we're going to drive more people to want to work in facilities, and those facilities are more productive and more profitable because their productivity is improved. So I think first and foremost is the question, what are the jobs that are of interest to the general population now? And can we have factory jobs that appeal to those people? And I'm in the side that says, yes, we can do this. And we can do this by having the manufacturing jobs have greater challenges, because a lot of people are a whole lot smarter than they're being given credit for. That's absolutely the case. Let's give them the opportunities.
Yeah, I think Roberta touched on a really important point there, and really explained it well. You know, as we introduce robots into the roles of what we'll call low-skilled labor jobs, that gives these people an opportunity to expand their roles and focus on higher value, more rewarding tasks. I mean, this ultimately leads to an increase in productivity, as you mentioned. Think about your phone. You know, everybody's got one or maybe two phones, and I'm pretty sure if I asked any one of you here to try to put one of those together, that little mobile phone you carry around, it'd probably be pretty challenging. So without the technology, we couldn't do it. Yet we produce multiples compared to when I was a young boy, we had one hanging on the wall, and that was for the whole family, and you didn't take it around with you. So we had to increase that productivity, and that's what Roberta talked about, increasing that productivity. And then that gives longer retention because you got more satisfaction in the job, and it's also better for the company because you're rewarding your employees, and you're helping you grow the company to produce and have more productivity. Really important point there.
Martin, any thoughts on what you've heard from Joe and Roberta?
Well, I'm a very big proponent of really making manufacturing business more attractive. I truly believe it really helps schools to really find maybe more emphasis on that kind of education, to really produce people that really want to go into the machine tool industry. I mean, I'm sometimes a bit disappointed when I talk to people that are involved with STEM schools, and they all trying to find higher grounds, becoming whatever, aircraft engineers and so on and so forth, and they don't really look at the possibilities that manufacturing nowadays really presents. And I think robots, at least, are, as Roberta said, makes it far more attractive, and really could be a step to really make this a very attractive type of profession to get involved with. Not just by, let's say, people that never went to college, because apprentice programs right now are really popping off left, right, and center, and are becoming fashionable. I'm really, really waiting for that 37 years, and I think robots really help us in that respect, along with other new terms such as what I mentioned earlier, smart manufacturing, that more and more is a very important aspect of manufacturing.
Let me add one more point to that dialogue, because it's really important. We're talking about, this transition, companies that weren't necessarily using robots, and what will that mean, and how do we do that effectively? And one of the key things that, and Roberta certainly is a foremost authority, should talk about the safety and what that means, safety assessment, and putting this into the workforce. What does that mean for the people working alongside them? What does that mean for the businesses? It's a critical component that if we're encouraging people to look at automation and increase their productivity, please understand what that means. As an industry, we want people to utilize the technology. We want people to be safe. Roberta, do you want to add to that?
He's tossed me a ball or a bone here. Well, I got to thank you, Joe, on that, because yes, my passion is safety within the workplace. And there is a little bit of a broader topic here, and we've seen some of this over the past year with COVID. And we've seen how there's times have been that we've had supply chain shortages because over the more recent, I'm going to say, decades, we've seen manufacturing leave the U.S., go elsewhere, and the U.S. has turned more into having services. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But that has also, I think, been why manufacturing has not been as appealing to, if you want to say, younger generations. And I could say that quite readily because I am an older person here. And at one point in time, having a job in manufacturing was considered to be a really good thing to get. And that, I think, went away a bit because some of manufacturing is going away. With automation now, and including the use of robotics, we are seeing reshoring of some businesses. And I do believe that we need to have a supply chain that's global, but we also do need to have more of our supply chain also being located in each and every country where there's people that are living and hope to have supplies of needed goods on a regular basis. And when we talk about manufacturing, sometimes people are worried about safety. I have to reassure everyone that as it relates to the robotics industry, we probably have about the best reputation for safety and an interest and a commitment to safety. And maybe that harkens back to fears associated with the Terminator or robots going wild. I have no idea why, but I'm glad we got that attention. And as even one example for within the U.S., a number of years ago, we went to OSHA and said, please adopt our safety standard. And this is a safety standard that is well known within all the robotics industry, not only in the U.S., but now also globally. And OSHA said, you're not our problem. We have much bigger fish to fry. We are not finding a high incidence level, or even it's only a very small incidence level with robotics. And the Robotic Industries Association does a great job in trying to train and push out information. So if you were to go into a facility, you will more likely find that applications using robots have had greater attention to them than other applications that do not have robots. So safety should be something that you feel confident and comfortable will exist in this environment and this day and time. I have seen tremendous improvement in workplace safety and safety of machinery over my working history, which is now, I hate to say it, 45 years. So it really is a good place to work. And you should feel very good about looking for jobs in manufacturing.
You know, I think we can blame Terminator on one hand and then iRobot with Will Smith on the other hand, and those be the two movies maybe that we blame for that. But Roberta, I wanted to follow up on that and just ask a question of, during the pandemic, have you seen a trend of there being more of a desire to put human beings and robots alongside one another, simply to spread out facilities and things along those lines? Is that something you've noticed?
That's an excellent point, and I'm sure that salespeople in my company would be able to cite all sorts of things, but I know that alone within our own company, that has been absolutely true. We use robots in the assembly of robots, and with COVID and having to space out people, what it has meant is some slightly different layouts and also some adjustment in timing of shifts and so forth. But we have had huge sales to go into applications that before might not have either been justified or thought of. Even one example I'll give you. Hospital laboratories that have to do testing for COVID. So when we had all the COVID testing going on, Hospitals alone in any test center, they were overwhelmed with samples that they had to process within a specific period of time. Normally it was done by people, pipetting little things. But instead, what we have found is quite a number of our robots were used in those applications. They were used as a collaborative application, so these were low payloads. These were also operating at a speed such that if there was any impact, there would be none to the person or persons nearby. But suddenly, this is automated, and at one point in time, no one would have ever even thought of it. It would be why we can handle the flow that's going through. But the amount of testing that was required and that hit every lab, they were completely overwhelmed. And so this was one area that suddenly automated and did not automate before. And we've seen the same thing for cleaning offices. We have robots that are installed on mobile robots, and they tour around offices, factories, and they actually are spreading disinfectant so that they're sanitizing these locations during off time. So suddenly there's all sorts of applications that weren't considered either viable, there was no need, they didn't need to increase the output, or they're just completely new applications. And so that's been a really an interesting set of occurrences. And Joe, I'm sure you've seen the same thing too.
Yeah, I would agree exactly what Roberta said. I mean, COVID certainly had different things. It certainly accelerated the use of automation around the world, certainly supply chains, things she talked about before, getting that value chain closer to the process, closer to the markets. But also we've seen more and more companies that have come to us asking us to solve some of their manufacturing or their assembly processes, and they are looking at robots as a natural separated capability. So instead of having 3 people in a line and expand their lines, they'll put a robot and a person. And again, the dull task in between is done by the robot, and the more creative tasks are done by the people, or the more challenging tasks, like say maybe doing some wire harness or something, which is really difficult for automation, but very good for us because as humans, our eyes and management of the aspects around us, we can quickly adjust to that, where robots is quite challenging. So there are more companies that are coming to us with exactly that mindset. How can we still get that productivity we need with the people, but utilize robots and have that spacing so that we keep our people safe? And again, we talked about safe in a different aspect. It's another way to keep people safe.
Martin, you can speak more to the machine tool aspect of this. How have you seen COVID-19 have an impact on facilities, and how has automation maybe helped fill some of those gaps?
We really have not seen, let's say, a change in the need for automation, but we have seen an increase in our order log because of COVID-19 and because of a large project we have in the semiconductor industry that it's been influenced by everybody working remotely and needing solid state memory chips. So that's kind of an aspect that we have seen. And we obviously trying very hard within our machine tools to really apply automation and robots to make very difficult tasks also to be palatable, to be serviced by automation. So one thing we have seen, how can we make those machines more productive by eliminating a task that is very time consuming? For instance, to center a part in a machine that normally does not allow to load and unload with automatic features. Well, by adding a system inside of the machine that can do the centering automatically, then allows the robot to actually really collaborate with the human being, load the part in the machine in a approximate location, and then let the machine, with its high precision machine axis, do the higher precision part of the work. So similar to what Joe said, collaboration maybe outside of the machine where the robot fulfills certain tasks along with people. The very same kind of philosophy can be applied within the machine. Or a part has to be turned around in mid-cycle. Well, the operator may not be there at that point, especially if the cycle takes 2.5 hours. Well, the robot will be there at that amount of time to really intervene and really make that cycle a continuous effort without waiting now half an hour for the operator to come back from a break room interruption. So I truly would like to emphasize that the collaboration outside and inside of the machines is equally important.
Roberto, we've heard the word collaborate, collaborative, collaboration all around this conversation. And I know you have some big opinions on the term collaborative robots. And so I want to give you the opportunity, give you the floor to talk a little bit more about collaborative robots. Is that a term that you use? And if not, how do you spin that? And what do you say that's different?
Wow, that's a great topic for me. Okay, my own personal opinion is there is no such thing as a collaborative robot. What there can be are collaborative applications. Now that I've said that, I have to tell you, my company talks all the time about collaborative robots and cobots, and I understand why. The term started being used before we really put our own arms around how should we use it. So here's an example of the horses escaped from the barn and we're trying to close the doors about the use of the terminology. So most times when someone talks about a collaborative robot, they're talking about a robot that could be used in a collaborative application. That can mean a lot of different things. If it's within the realm of the robots that my own company makes, they're smaller payload robots, and they have safety functions such that if the robot were to contact you, it would stop. Okay, so somebody could say, oh, sure, you could use that for a collaborative application. Well, yeah, but what if the robot is manipulating a knife or a razor blade or a very sharp piece of sheet metal, which appears knife-like while in movement? So here's an example in which, the robot could have all of the capabilities for enabling a collaborative application, but the application could be dangerous to be used without safeguard. So collaborative applications, that's the way to think. And yes, it is possible to have collaborative applications using robots and then not having safeguarding. But the reality is that's lower payload and slightly lower speeds. So in order to embrace the concept of collaboration between machinery, not just robots, machinery and humans, we need to look at how can this be done regardless of the payload size, regardless of the speed, and regardless of whether it's a robot or not. And in those instances, we are talking about integrating some safety device or protective device that will slow down or stop any of the operation before a person could come into contact. So one thing is you allow contact, and the other one is you say, oh, we're not going to allow contact, or we only allow contact in very limited circumstances. And we're seeing a huge flurry of activity in this area, and it's called speed and separation monitoring. So this is very exciting because it's expanding opportunities for collaborative applications and in all payload ranges and for all sorts of purposes. And we're seeing the development of new products in this arena. One is by a company called Veo Robotics. And in fact, Joe's company is an integrator for Veo Robotics, so he can talk to that, as well as other very well-known safety companies, for example, SICK. So this is an exciting time in that collaborative applications are increasing and being used for more and more and more things, but we're also learning a little bit as we move along. So, but it's very exciting, very exciting. And I will not talk about cobots, I will talk about collaborative applications.
I appreciate that distinction. I really enjoyed that. Now, Joe, Roberta mentioned technology that would kind of help enable this, regardless of speed, payload, things like that. I'm picturing like a halo that could like go around a robot or something like that would protect a human. But tell me a little bit more about that technology as it develops and how that enables more collaborative applications, not robots.
Perfect. Yes, exactly. We talk about collaborative applications, and I'll echo what Roberta said. It's really sensor technology that have really bridged that gap, made a big difference over the last several years. And as Roberta mentioned, Veo Robotics, and one of the really unique things about that. So I come from the robot world, and we always knew kind of where the joints were of the robot. So it's like a human, your waist, your elbow, your shoulder, your wrist, etc. And we knew where the joints were. And in some regard, we could tell maybe where the end of arm tool was, because we could do some calculations and algorithms to that. So as Roberta said, as you kind of start to violate that space, we could, as speed and separation, identify what to happen. One of the big differences with Veo is actually encompassing the whole area and all of the machinery around that space and whatever the robot's carrying. That's really kind of the holy grail, you might call it, of our industry, because if you're picking up just say the phone, I used an example before, but then I pick up the door for a refrigerator, they're taking up a completely different space. And if I had to violate that space, it certainly would be a different, thing that would have to be calculated. This system does it automatically, and it's recognizing that and keeping people safe. So it's really those changes in technology, that the advances in technology from all the sensory capabilities, vision, etc., that have made that difference in putting the big industrial robots that Roberta talked about in an area where we can be more in a collaborative human-robot collaboration, or machine collaboration with humans. Now, having said that, there are things out there. Many years ago, one of the companies that I know of had a thing called a robo coaster, and at the end of the robot arm, you sat in a chair, two people, and got spun around, and in some ways even more fun than roller coaster, because you had no idea where you're going. But it had all the safety management. There's some of the things that Roberta talked about earlier in terms of a redundancy and understanding what safety meant to keep people from, not getting injured and still be able to enjoy that technology. So it's the bridging of all those technologies together. It's really exciting and dynamic time in our industry, as Roberta said, that all of these things are coming together to make a big difference in how to use robots in collaborative environment. Last thing I will mention, though, is the RIA, Robotics Industry Association, pretty clearly identifies what we call the stages of collaboration. So if you want to use a robot in a collaborative environment, utilizing that as a guide, you can make sure that you use it properly and be able to use the various pieces of equipment that Roberta talked about and I talked about, even in the machine tool industry and interfacing with the machine tools.
Martin, where do you see the biggest opportunities for continued growth in automation in the facilities that you work in and that you interact with?
I really see it again. I'm sorry to use the term again, in bringing all the different aspects together. Really not looking just at certain limited tasks like loading and unloading, but looking at everything else that a machine or a system of machines can do to really simplify the work for the human beings. And we see this on the machine tool side, for instance, by integrating as many tasks as possible into the machine, such as obviously all the critical machining processes, but also features such as measuring features. So if a machine is milling or grinding a high precision component, and then the robot is being tasked to load and unload automatically. Well, if we unload the part and we don't know whether the part has to meet a certain size expectations, then the unloading doesn't do us any good, because the part, once it's being removed from the workhold equipment, can no longer be brought back into the same location without a lot of manual intervention. So being able to measure the part in the machine in its final state, including the opportunity of making automatic corrections for the next part, or even fine-tune the process within the cycle to get to even a tighter tolerance at the end, and then let the part being automatically unloaded really enhances the capabilities of the entire system. And that goes on into many other aspects. Like in one case, we are, for instance, using a high definition camera to measure critical features in the machine, and then those features define a new coordinate system from which all the other features are being machined from. Those kind of complex mathematical requirements in the past were not possible, but with the power of today's CNC controls, you can do a lot of things that would be impossible for a human being to do in a manual operation. So again, the same kind of thinking that is being applied in the robotics world can really also be applied to the machine tool, and it goes quite far. And I don't think we have reached the end of that. I think it's going to go on into even more complex systems, not for the purpose of complexity, but to really make the productivity really a reality.
And but if something based upon what you said, Martin, which is actually looking at it from another perspective. Joe and I have been talking about the robot and how at one point in time, and even this is still true, more technology is going into the robot to make it more sensitive, more sensor driven, to have more safety inside. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing that technology now going out externally, as in the example talked about a minute ago for speed and separation monitoring. So at one point in time, everything was done external from the robot. Now it's being brought in, and now it's also being externalized. But from what you just talked about, which I thought was fascinating, your machines, which were already technical, you're internalizing sensors which are being manipulated by robots. So your internalization of sensors is by use of a robotic technology. And so your equipment is incorporating this new technology, and you could just say it just so happens to be that it is provided by robots that manipulate the sensors. But I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. So I thought it was fascinating.
Thank you.
Joe, I know one of the things you're passionate about, and as we heard Martin talk about, just more smartness kind of throughout the entire system. I know one of the things you're passionate about is ease of use and growing in that area. How do you see that continuing to develop, and what does having easier to use robots and automation, what does that do for the future of the industry?
Yeah, I think ease of use is probably one of the more critical things for us going forward. I think that, again, I use the phone as a good example of that. It's intuitive. No one, I'm guessing no one, reads the instructions that come with it. I don't even know if there is one, because it's so intuitive. You buy a phone, you open it up, even if you get a new app, you just click on it, you open the new app and you start using it. It's that intuitive. And that kind of ease of use thing is necessary. And going forward, many of the companies who are working on it, Roberta's company is certainly one of the leaders in that space. In fact, they talk more today about ease of use than anything else in terms of the market advantage of utilizing that product. That's one of the things. Another one of the manufacturers come up with another tablet, drag and drop. This is the way of the future, and I think it's pretty critical. And we talked about the labor challenges we have. We make it easier to use. That skill level goes up for the employees, for the companies, the utilization of the equipment. So it's really critical to move that forward. And you think about a lot of the companies that Roberta and I'm sure Martin worked with, the small, medium-sized companies. They don't have the capabilities to hire a whole bunch of technical people to support equipment. So these small, medium-sized companies, this has made it available to them to be able to use this equipment. First with collaborative robots from collaborative applications, but now with more and more equipment with ease of use, they'll be able to use more of this technology. So it's really critical, the ease of use and pushing that technology forward from a software perspective.
Roberta, easier to use, quicker to deploy, is that the future of automation?
I think it's the future of everything. Mm-hmm. To be very truthful, look at it. Cell phones, personal computers. I remember typing in code in order to have a letter printout. And so everything goes towards ease of use. And quite frankly, if something is going to have any automation or any sort of, if you want to say, power behind it, it has to be easy to use, because it has to be something that each and every person can pick up and use by themselves. We don't see anybody saying, let's go back to our old rotary phones. We don't see anybody saying, oh, give me back my washboard. I really am tired of the electronics that I see in my washer and dryer. Nobody says that. And when you look at any sort of manufacturing facility, I'd say, if anything, early adopters are willing to take on a technology that's not easy to use because they feel that they can wrest the benefits from it, whether it's increased precision, increased throughput, I don't know what. But if any company is the least bit pragmatic and they're saying, we need to be able to have the maximum productivity with the best quality while having a workforce that is really deployed very well and that workforce is stable. All of that means it has to be easy to use. So it's across the board, everywhere.
And as Roberta pointed out, think about it. I think we're bridging that in our personal lives, and it's making it easier for people to recognize and accept utilizing that technology. You know, it was many years ago that we went from washing dishes in the sink to a dishwasher, and no one complained about that. They're not saying take the dishwasher, I want to go back to washing them in the sink, as Roberta pointed out. But the vacuum cleaner and many homes today, millions of them are sold now that people are using that in their homes. So we've kind of now, I think, finally got over that hurdle of, you know, that in our lives. So it's making it even easier to use and people accepting it. We talked about earlier a little bit of fear. The fear is starting to go away, saying, yeah, no, I can see where it made my life better. Let make my life better even in my work environment, so I don't have to get dirty or be unsafe because we got this technology. So we've really moved in that direction, I think, overall as a population. But as Roberta said, if we make it easy to use, like the dishwasher or the phone, we will certainly see more of that in manufacturing.
I've always heard that the best jobs for robots fall under the 3 Ds of robotics: dull, dirty, and dangerous. And if it falls under any of those, then it's good to give it to a robot to automate that process. That's what I've been told, and I subscribe to that theory. So let's move on to our final segment of the show today. We're just looking at bold predictions for the future. And so we've already touched on a little bit of this as we talked about ease of use and what the future looks like. But I want each of your boldest predictions for the future of automation. So just give me your biggest and boldest predictions about the future of automation. Let's see. I want to go with Joe first. Joe, give us your biggest and boldest prediction for what the future of automation looks like.
Wow, that's a great question. Big question, because there's so many: agriculture, construction, last mile, robots as a service. But I'd say there's 2 big things for me, and maybe I'll steal one of the others for homogeneous robot programming. I think that's going to happen. Today, all these companies have their own platforms, their own programming, and you can't put 3 different models on the same line because they don't talk to each other. I think that's going to go away. That's going to change for the future. And I don't think it's a distant future, but I think that will happen. And I know people say that's a bold prediction, but I think it'll happen. And the other one I think we'll see is drone people movers. The Jetsons are coming. They'll be putting us on these buses that fly in the air and get us around places called drone people movers.
I am excited to see that potentially in the future. Martin, hit us with your biggest and boldest prediction for the future of automation.
Well, I truly believe in, and I mentioned it several times, in smart manufacturing, and automation is a very important part of smart manufacturing. But I think what is more important, that certain logical decisions are being made in an automated fashion. This can be based on simple algorithms that are maybe defined without too much complexity, or it can be paired with artificial intelligence, where really huge amount of data is being processed nowadays in a very simple way. It's no longer that far reach. A lot of decisions are made today on that level, even in the machining sector. And again, then paired with closed loop systems that go back to the robot, that go back to the machine tool control to change certain parameter settings. That is no longer unheard of. And now you pair that with, as Joe said, with more standardization in the connectivity. such as OPC UA, which is one of the standards that we have adhered to, and we really see a tremendous potential in that technology. All that together will really be the future and will not go away. And I'm very excited about this future.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about it as well. That's a fantastic answer, Martin. Roberta, I know you have an awesome, big, bold prediction for us. Let's hear it. I know you have one locked and loaded, so hit us with it.
Actually, I was going to say I'm not nearly as imaginative as either of my colleagues here. I don't know if it's because of my background in safety, but from my standpoint for a prediction is that no matter whatever we think is going to be going to happen, we are always blindsided and surprised by something that does. So we have to be prepared for what we don't expect. What I do expect, and it doesn't take anything bold on my part, is that we will see the increased use of robotics, not just in manufacturing, but also in day-to-day use. You already see them now in stores where you have a robot that goes up and down aisles and scans all the products so that it understands for inventory control. We will see increasing uses of robots in environments that we never thought of them before. They'll be used to collect all the shopping carts in a supermarket or a large shopping center. Maybe it's a robotic shopping cart. It knows how to toddle home and how to get there and not hurt anyone. We will see it just become absolutely enmeshed and ingrained in our lives. And so it's not a bold prediction because it's already happening and more will happen. I think what will be our biggest challenge is how do we still then maintain some sort of human essence in which we have contact with and interaction with those things that are of nature or from nature? Will we understand that it's just as enjoyable to drink a glass of wine, we were talking about wine earlier, as it is to handle the bottle and remove the cork and relish the experience of pouring the glass? That could be automated. Do we want to automate all of these things? Because sometimes it's nice to enjoy the moment. But hopefully, robots will be used and further used so that we can have the time for us to enjoy those real moments of embracing our environments and interacting with them. Because I, for one, would like a robot to do a whole lot of work so that I could sit down and have a glass of wine.
That's a beautiful sentiment, and I think a wonderful note to wrap up on here today. So Martin Nobbs from Hardin's, Joe Gemma from Calvary Robotics, and Roberta Nelson-Shea from Universal Robots. Thank you all so much for joining us here for the MarketScale Automation Industry Roundtable.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And our audience out there, thank you all so much for joining us here for our Automation Roundtable today. We appreciate it very much. We'll be right back here at the same time next week. We'll be talking retail. So join us for the Retail Industry Roundtable with my colleague Daniel Litwin running the show for that one. But for us today, thank you again so much for joining us. Check out MarketScale.com for more thought leadership in the world of automation amongst a number of other B2B industries. We have a lot of content there for you to check out. Go to MarketScale.com now. But for us today, I've been your host today, Tyler Kern. Thanks for joining us.